Welcome to the Deep Dives. Today, we're tackling, that universal struggle of making good habits stick. You sent over excerpts from this book about behavior change, and honestly, this is something I could use some help with myself.
Yeah, it's a fascinating area. What's interesting is how much of it really comes down to understanding our brains. They're wired for those immediate rewards, not necessarily what's best for us way down the line.
Right, like my brain wants that extra cookie now,
Yeah.
even though I know it'll totally mess up my healthy eating goals.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. The book starts with a story about hand washing in Karachi, Pakistan, back in 1998. The city was facing a major health crisis tied to poor sanitation.
Yeah, this case study, it really highlights that gap between knowing and doing. There was a public health worker named Stephen Luby, and he realized that something as simple as hand washing could really drastically improve things. The problem was so many people already knew it was important, but they just weren't doing it consistently.
So information alone, like just knowing wasn't enough. What did they end up doing?
Well, they made it enjoyable. Luby ended up working with Procter& Gamble, and they introduced this new soap that was really fragrant and it felt luxurious to use. Suddenly, hand washing wasn't just a chore, it was a slightly more pleasurable experience.
So adding a little bit of luxury made a big difference, huh?
Yeah, the results were pretty impressive. Rates of diarrheal illness, they dropped significantly. But what's really fascinating is that years later, follow-up visits showed that over 95% of households were still washing their hands regularly. Even without that free soap, it had become like a real habit.
Wow. Okay, so this isn't just about hand washing. This is telling us something bigger about behavior change, right?
Exactly. This story, it really illustrates what the book calls the fourth law of behavior change. Make it satisfying. Now, the first three laws, making it obvious, attractive, and easy, those kind of set the stage. But that fourth law, making it satisfying, that's where the magic of habit formation really happens.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this applies to my own life. Like, I know I should exercise more, but it's not exactly something I, look forward to.
Yeah, that's a classic example. Going to the gym, eating healthy, saving money. These things often have these delayed rewards, right? We might feel better in the long run, but that immediate experience isn't always enjoyable, especially when you're first starting out.
So how do we deal with this? It's like our brains are practically working against us.
Well, the book argues that this tension comes from this mismatch. Our ancient brains, they evolved to really prioritize those immediate rewards,
Hmm.
things that were crucial for survival back in the day. But our modern environment, it's full of choices with these delayed payoffs.
Okay, that makes total sense. So how do we bridge that gap? How do we make those long-term, good-for-you habits more satisfying right now in the moment?
Well, the book offers a bunch of strategies. One that's simple but effective is pairing a short-term reward with the habit you're trying to build. It's kind of like creating a mini reward system for yourself.
Oh, like if I finish a workout, I can watch an episode of my favorite show.
Exactly. Or you could save a small amount of money every time you resist buying something you don't really need. There's an example in the book about a couple saving for a trip to Europe. They called their savings jar Trip to Europe, and every time they skipped takeout or resisted an impulse buy, they put money in the jar. That visual reminder, plus the anticipation of the trip, it made saving more satisfying.
That's so clever. It's like hacking your brain's reward system to work for you. What are some other examples?
Well, there's this really interesting example. They call it the paperclip strategy. This stockbroker used it to motivate himself to make sales calls, which he found really daunting. So he'd start with two jars. One was full of 120 paper clips, and the other one was empty. Every time he made a call, he'd move a paperclip from the full jar to the empty one.
Wait, so just the act of moving a paperclip made a difference?
It made the invisible visible. It gave him a tangible measure of his progress and that sense of accomplishment with each call. Those small wins, that immediate hit of satisfaction, can really reinforce the behavior.
Wow, this is making me rethink how I approach my own goals. I never really thought about the power of those small rewards.
It's all about making those should-do activities feel more appealing right in the moment. And that brings us back to this fundamental idea, making it satisfying.
Yeah.
It's not just about adding those external rewards. It's about finding ways to make the experience itself more enjoyable.
So like with the hand washing example, it was about making the act of washing your hands actually feel good.
Exactly. Sometimes it's about finding those little enhancements that make a habit a little more pleasurable. Think about those sensory details. Maybe it's using a beautifully designed notebook for journaling, or finding a workout buddy who makes exercise fun, or listening to your favorite podcast while you clean.
I'm starting to see how these seemingly small things can actually make a huge difference. But I'm also curious, if our brains are so wired for this instant gratification, how do we deal with those temptations that kind of derail us?
Oh, that's a great question. And it leads us to another really fascinating concept from the book, temptation bundling. We'll dive into that next.
Okay, I can't wait. This has already given me so many ideas.
You know, it's incredible how our brains haven't fully adapted to the demands of modern life. We're surrounded by all this delayed gratification where the consequences of our choices, they might not show up for weeks or months or even years.
It's like we're running on this outdated software. No wonder those instant gratification temptations are so hard to resist.
Exactly. It goes back to what we were talking about before, that mismatch between our ancient brains and, our modern environment. Imagine our ancestors way back on the savannah. Their priorities were finding food and shelter and avoiding predators, right? Immediate gratification. It was totally essential for survival back then.
It makes sense those instant rewards were tied directly to their well-being. But today, it's like a whole different story.
Right. We're bombarded with these choices that have delayed consequences, like saving for retirement or eating healthy or exercising. The benefits are often so distant and kind of abstract. But meanwhile, that extra slice of cake or that late night Netflix binge that offers instant gratification.
It's this constant battle. My brain just wants what feels good now, even if I know it's not the best choice in the long run.
And that's where this idea of temptation bundling comes in. It's a way to leverage our desire for that immediate gratification to actually help us achieve those long-term goals.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more about this temptation bundling thing.
The basic idea is to link an activity you want to do with something you need to do. You're essentially combining temptation with something beneficial.
So, like, I could only let myself watch my favorite show while I'm on the treadmill. That's kind of genius.
Exactly. You're making the should-do activity more appealing by associating it with something you genuinely enjoy. It's a win-win. You get the immediate reward of that enjoyable activity while also, making progress on your goals.
It's like tricking your brain into thinking exercise is fun. Do you have any other examples of how this could work?
Sure. Let's say you love listening to podcasts or audiobooks, but you never seem to find the time. You could try only allowing yourself to listen to them while you're doing chores like cleaning or cooking.
Oh, I actually do that.
Yeah.
Makes those mundane tasks so much more enjoyable.
Okay, temptation bundling is officially going on my list of brain hacks.
It's a great tool to have for sure. And it speaks to this broader theme of, finding those little bits of pleasure that make even the good habits more appealing in the present moment.
Like we're rewiring our brains to find joy in things that might not have been enjoyable before. But speaking of rewiring, I'm curious, is there actually a way to change how our brains respond to pleasure over time?
That's a really interesting question, and it gets to the heart of how we develop lasting habits. It's not just about those external rewards. It's about cultivating a sense of intrinsic satisfaction. We'll dive into that next.
Okay, I'm ready to dive deeper. This is all starting to click for me. So we've talked about the power of those immediate rewards and even tricking our brains with things like temptation bundling. But is there a way to actually change how our brains respond to those good habits over time? Can we go from forcing ourselves to do something to genuinely enjoying it? Yeah, that's the ultimate goal, right? And it's definitely possible. It really comes down to the power of association and repetition. Remember that fourth law of behavior change, make it satisfying. It's not just about those external rewards. It's about cultivating the sense of intrinsic satisfaction with the behavior itself.
Okay, but how do you go from thinking, oh, I have to do this, to, wow, I actually enjoy this? That feels like a big leap.
It starts with kind of shifting our mindset. Instead of viewing those good habits as these chores, we can try to reframe them as opportunities for growth or self-care or even play.
Oh, I like that. It's about finding that element of enjoyment within the activity itself.
Exactly. Let's say you're trying to build a meditation practice. Instead of approaching it with that sense of dread, try focusing on the potential benefits, like reduced stress or better focus or just a sense of calm. And as you experience those benefits, you start to associate those positive feelings with the act of meditation itself.
It's like creating this positive feedback loop in your brain.
Precisely. The more you repeat that behavior, the stronger those associations become. It's kind of like carving a new neural pathway that connects the activity with pleasure.
So it's not about forcing ourselves to enjoy something we hate. It's about finding those elements that resonate with us and building on those positive associations.
Exactly. And it might take some experimentation to figure out what works best for you. The key is to approach it with curiosity and openness, not resistance.
This is making me realize that maybe I've been going about this all wrong. I've been so focused on willpower and forcing myself to do things I don't enjoy. But what if I tried to find ways to actually enjoy the process?
Yeah, it's a total game changer. And it's not about achieving perfection. You know there will be days when you struggle when those old patterns resurface. The important thing is to be kind to yourself and acknowledge those challenges and keep reinforcing those positive associations.
This reminds me of what we talked about earlier, those visual measures of progress. Could that help reinforce those positive feelings as well?
Oh, absolutely. Those visual cues, they can be these incredibly powerful reminders of how far we've come. Think about a runner tracking their mileage or a writer, tracking their word count. Those visual markers are tangible proof of their progress and they reinforce that sense of accomplishment.
So it's about connecting those dots between our efforts and the positive results. That visual reminder, it helps to keep us motivated.
Exactly. And that motivation, it helps us push through those challenges and setbacks. It's like this really powerful cycle.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. We've learned so much about the science of habit formation and the power of that immediate gratification and some really practical strategies for making lasting change. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
Just remember, change is possible. Our brains are incredibly adaptable, and we have the power to rewire our habits and create a more fulfilling life. Embrace the power of pleasure. Find ways to make the journey as rewarding as the destination. And, be patient. Habit formation, it's a process, not a destination. There will be bumps along the way, but with a little understanding of how our brains work, we can create lasting positive change.
This has been incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise. I know I'm walking away with a whole new perspective on how to approach my goals.
My pleasure. It's been a fascinating conversation. And remember that journey of self-improvement, it's ongoing. But by taking small, consistent steps and finding those moments of satisfaction along the way, we can unlock our full potential.
And that's a wrap on another deep dive. We hope you enjoyed this exploration of habit formation and the power of pleasure. We'd love to hear your thoughts and any aha moments you had along the way. Until next time, happy habit building.